Oh, welcome to an interesting edition of Understanding the Science of You, which is based on kind of understanding the science of me or walking through understanding the science of me. However, this episode kind of turns out, we're going to find out. So I thought today would be interesting to have me actually be the guest and my good friend Todd Mad Dog Matzkin-Bridger turn and be the host. Now, the reason why I asked Todd to do this is because first and foremost, he enjoys messing with me, right? And so that makes for a good question and answer session. And two, look, this is even myself. I don't always recognize change or progress or things that are different about myself, and as a result, I don't always give myself credit for differences or things or notice or whatever else. And so this is also an exercise of self-reflection, right? By asking Todd to kind of ask some questions, because the reason, now to explain Todd knows me strictly from the corporate world, right? And so Todd knew me in various stages of my corporate life, various personas in my corporate life, various temperaments within my corporate life, right? And it'd be hard pressed, I think, to find somebody who would spend as much time with me, studying me, figuring out how to navigate me without catching shrapnel, take your pick, and as well as also like I said, having an enjoyment of poking the bear, so to speak, as well every now and then. And so I thought that it would be a good contrast as well for people to understand kind of what I was and who I am. And so when I talk about walking in different shoes and being a self-proclaimed breaker of molds and builder of bridges, that really does come from living in two very different realities, and both being supported, and then having my challenges living in the same world. just living in it and experiencing it from a different reality. So anyway, and so you don't know what you don't know, right? And so this is a way. So asking Todd to kind of ask questions and saying, hey man, so what happened? All of a sudden you were here. Next thing we know, we get like an email that says you were gone. I get like a random text or something that was like, hey, you want to meet up for lunch or something? And then, I don't know, 6 or 7 years later, you hit me up with some podcast and you're like, and so then here we are, right? So I don't know Todd, if there's anything you want to kind of add to that introduction, but if anybody if you can't tell, Todd has his, what I will call his trademark, devilish / shit-eating grin that I know him for right now. So I'm gonna kind of pause and Todd, let you jump in here and take it away or add what you want.
Well, yeah, I think the viewers of this should strap on their seatbelt, pull over, because we're about to go on a wild ride. Safety first, So we're going to enjoy this. I've waited for this moment for a couple decades. For the roles to be reversed here with no recourse for whatever questions I may ask or things I may bring up. We should put like an unedited version of this up somewhere, Graham, too. That could be fun for people.
Well, I'm already having a choking reaction, so who knows what kind of reactions going on here.
What was funny, what you brought up is, one day you left the corporate world. It was just gone. Someone met with me. It was like, yep, Graham's gone. I was like, okay, here we go. And then, we talked a little bit, we chatted, and every now and then our pleasantries. And then I get this opportunity to speak on your podcast. But it should be noted that along the way, you also helped me out too. You gave me a nice recommendation for the job I have now, which was a huge plus. So I wanted to wait to do the podcast till after that, make sure, just to make sure, no issues. But you come to me and you say, hey, look, I've had this change from corporate Graham to this new Graham, this spiritual, Graham. And, the first thing I did is I went back and I'm like, okay, I want to listen to some of these podcasts. Great content, Graham. But the first thing I noticed is the glasses, looking like Bono, over there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy really has changed. Before I even heard the words, I was like, I could never see him or picture him wearing glasses like that. So I need to know what's with the glasses change and the tints, and it looks like it's a color tint. I'm very confused here, and I need to know why.
Well, I don't know why you're confused, but I can explain to you why I'm wearing these glasses.
Yeah.
You know, and then from there you can figure out if you still remain confused, and I'll continue to answer questions. So, no. So one of the things that, look, I spent a lot of time in what do you want, besides like understanding myself, like also just dealing with health and wellness, right? There was a lot of, there's a lot of neglect that occurred, in the corporate career, and and so one of the things that I had been gotten diagnosed with along the way was this thing called Irlen syndrome, which affects, I guess we'll call it my brain's ability, the way that my brain intakes optical information. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. And by applying these, there's like 9 different shades or whatever, and there's these, and each one in those different various shades or prisms allow the brain to be able to take in the light and process information properly. And so, believe it or not, I had a different pair of these that were actually a different shade color, because that was what my brain needed at that time. And then as it changed, it became this different color. And if we're being honest, I'd like nothing more than to, have my eyes healed and not wear any glasses whatsoever. But until then, I wear these because, it just helps to, reduce headaches and stop stuff from like blurring on the pages and things of that nature. But yeah, it's definitely, I've gotten used to just people looking at me weird, like when I'm walking indoors with, the glasses on or whatever, because people think it's like a fashion statement or something. It's just like, no, just trying to avoid a headache and, being able to read words.
Well, that's awesome. I come at you right off the bat, and you have an eye condition. And so now I'm the total asshole of this podcast. So great. You somehow still get me every time, Graham. I joke with you.
This is part of the deal, though, right? Because you do know me in ways, and it was quite funny. Look, for a little bit of background too, we talk about corporate ever. I was very fortunate to experience a lot of really cool things in the corporate world, and experience the growth of the company and be in a driving seat in a lot of that growth, or front row seat in a lot of that growth, going from a company with 400 people when I joined to 18,000 when I left. And so for me to just randomly leave overnight was kind of like wait a second, now this guy was like the poster child. You don't have to have a college degree. Look how great you can have this it's just in that structure, like a great career. Not needing that as long as you perform and blah, 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 right? And then all of a sudden, poof, gone. Just like that, right? And so, believe me, it was unexpected, for all of us. So anyway, so that being said, there's nothing going with just for that little bit of backstory there. And so, look, that's where it was. And so I was thinking to myself, gosh, well, wonder what kind of things Todd might ask me. And I started to think, I'm like, I can't even remember what it's like being that person. Like, I'm like, it's going to be weird. So anyway, look, man, but that, what you're doing and what we're talking about is the whole point, because, anyway, I think that's they say leopard doesn't change its spots, but I think that, anybody who knows me might beg to differ.
Yeah. It's funny because I still think of you the old way. It's like where you haven't seen a kid since you were 12, and you still think of them as that 12-year-old kid, and they're 45. It's like, oh yeah, I still think of you as skinny. I still call you skinny. Which is great. And you introduced me and you said, hey, it's Todd, Mad Dog, Matzkin-Bridger. But do you remember what my original nickname was?
I do. I wasn't going to bring that up, but yes, I do. There was a reason why we had to go to Mad Dog. That's right.
That's right. The original nickname was Mini Me. That's what it was. I was a Mini Graham, and how it started was because during the interview, someone interviewed me, and they said, hey, look, hang on a second. They got someone else. They started interviewing me. The person goes, hang on a second. I think there's someone that you'll relate to better. And then you come in, and come to find out it was all because of the height. couple short guys meeting together, and then I could relate to more. So I got the nickname Mini Me, and you're right. At some point in time, I think I got sick of it. And,
Well, yeah. I mean, as your career was growing, right? Like it was one of those things that it's like, hey, kind of like a little brother, right? Where it's cool to have like a big brother, a little brother, but at some point in time, you get through college and now you're on your own life, and you got to,
Yeah.
establish a new identity.
Well, I love how I got Mad Dog because I got mad at the name, and so
Yeah.
they just called me Mad Dog. It wasn't even
Well, no,
creative.
man. We had to think about like what was like the exact opposite of like a mini. It was right. It was just that was a Mad Dog. That was your own thing, right? Like I don't know,
Oh,
because it was so not you, but it was you because you have that streak in you. It just doesn't, it just doesn't come out the same way as it does in others.
no, that's true. Oh my gosh, Joe, I remember my excitement getting hired and my thoughts of where this career could take me. And what I wasn't there for was obviously when you got hired.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe you could talk just a little bit and tell us a little bit about maybe your background before, and then what you thought of the opportunity when you first entered your, this job inside of corporate America.
Yeah, wow. You just wanted to ask bring up all of the heartbreaks from the past year, aren't you? Try to squeak one in before we started, just to knock me down a peg or two, give me give me a little bit of a slice of humble pie to have before we get started. Now you want to ask me about my trauma, like trying to get hired when nobody wanted to talk to me. Yeah. So literally, that was part of to your point, and that was part of like the story of mine at Quicken Loans was, I was at the time I was dating a girl, and her friend Gina, worked there, and she was like, hey, we're starting up this new sales thing. I think you could be good at it. I just started another job. I was like, no, I'll be fine. I'm good. And I never thought about that. And then 6 months later, I was like, maybe I would like a change. And because things were getting a little crazy there, people throwing stuff at each other in offices, and it was kind of like anyway, I was like, all right, this is cool. I'm gonna look somewhere else. And so, then I went for interviews, and it went from one guy I went and had an interview on Friday, and then the guy saying, look, I know it's short notice, but we have a class starting on Monday. Do you think you could make it if I could get you in to 2 weeks to the 2 weeks later going, oh no, there was no class. We don't know what you're talking about. And then me having a page, as Jay, right? And so at this time, the way to follow up with them, right, was to page. Right? And so it took me like paging Jay for like 6 months straight to get him to hire me. And so finally, it wasn't so much that I got hired as much as he just caved. He said, look, man, I don't know if this guy can sell for shit, but he's at least persistent as can be. And so they gave me and so I got a job. And tying that into your other question, I mean, I had no idea what I was trying to get. All I knew is I was trying to get a job that didn't pay in terms of hourly wage, because I felt like I was looking for like a real job.
Yeah.
And I'm doing air quotes for those that can't see, right? I say real job. Right? I don't know what that meant. I was like 20 years. I turned 21 my second day of training, right? So it was literally my only real professional job, like outside of like working in a small business. You know what I mean? It was my only real professional job. And so I was like, hey, this is it. Don't screw it up. In the back of my mind, I always felt like somebody's, going to take a chance on me and get rewarded. I didn't know why. I just always had that feeling in the back of my head. And then I was very fortunate that a lot of things made sense from when after I started, until I left. But I definitely was like there was like the last kid in dodgeball. And then there was like all right, they're looking for anybody else but you left on the wall, and they're pretending you don't even exist. And they're playing a few games and then come back to you. You're right. Only when they're down like 3 people, they finally let you in. Yeah. It was kind of like one of those things. And so in that respect, the expectations weren't real high on me. And, I was very fortunate that somehow it made sense. And the rest is a lot of history.
I loved when someone from the other team in dodgeball wore glasses. I always tried to throw that ball right at their face, like boom, like that actually really happened to me. But
I was going to say another reason why I don't want to have the glasses,
Yeah, it's a detriment in dodgeball. It for sure is. It's so funny you brought up, because I was thinking about it. You always used to bring up how your first day was your birthday, the first day you started. And that's how you celebrated. And it was a story that would always get brought up, because we used to, as we were part of your team. We used to give you a birthday gift, and I'd say, oh, it was also like kind of your anniversary at the same time. It was cool. I remember one time you were very appreciative of every gift that we got you. There were some bad ones out there, but there was one we got you, and we got you a watch, and as a team, and you had this watch. And for the viewers who don't know, you flashy guy, always dressed nice, nice car, hair slicked back, looking like Tom Cruise. He had the little piece that came down the window washer, kind of over your forehead, right? Always looking solid. But you had a watch that you got when you bought some luggage. You got a free watch that you got from a luggage set. And it was terrible. It was like one of the worst watches I've ever seen in my life. We were all slightly embarrassed for you. And we all chipped in, and we got you a watch. And we also did try to time this on days when production was bad. So like you couldn't yell at us. So we give you the gift. We would all time it. So like, oh my God, today's a super shitty day of production. Graham's going to be all over our asses. We're like, oh, let's give him his birthday gift now. We're like, yeah, let's do it. So we gave you this watch, and you were so appreciative of it, and you were so happy about it, and you wore it all the time. I'm sure you still have it on your wrist now, but it was one of those things we could tell how much you really loved it, and that was cool. Anniversary gift and birthday gift at the same time.
That's funny you say that, because one of the things that I'm known for now is coming across very unappreciative of gifts. So somewhere along the line between, well, there's a lot of things that changed between Skitty Scoundrels, which was the name of the team that we were referencing, and the name of the sales team, and then current day. Yeah, somehow I look back, and I think when I look back at I think about, when was I like the most happy? When was I the most myself, the most authentic, and when did it change? And the Scoundrels days was definitely the most enjoyable. After that, it was, I guess technically, so that, by the way, that would have been the first 6 years of a 21-year career. So I guess the next 14 or 15 were downhill in certain ways. I had a lot of achievements and successes, but there was, but there was a lot of lack of progress in quality of life in other ways in order to be able to accomplish those achievements.
Yeah. So you bring up something that I think is important, and you're kind of doing some reflection and looking back, and you say, hey, look, those first few years were super happy and enjoyed them. Not that every day is great, but overall was really great. What do you think changed? Was it something inside you that changed? Was it something with the company? Was it a combination of both of those things? What was that turning point?
Gosh, what was that turning point? I think somewhere along the way, if you recall, in order to roll out divisions, right, going from a sales team to creating, what became divisions, and so that, Quicken Loans could be, Rocket Financial would grow into Quicken Loans and things like that. That was the first big leap of growth for the sales folks. And in doing that, it went from, I guess, doing things that was, I guess, I don't know. I guess that's a good question. Somewhere along the way, I started thinking that I needed to be something different than what I was in order to get to where I wanted to go. Right. And so, now, again, obviously I didn't get to that spot without some feedback. Right. So, some of that, and so I just piled on the different masks and kept trying on different personas until I could figure out what I could continue, and and so I think that really was a lot of it, right? Was that I just always kind of came in trying to wearing a disguise every day, trying to fit in.
Yeah.
And that was it. And where Skitty Scoundrels, I never worried about fitting in, right? Like, it just, for whatever reason, there was just a certain I don't know, maybe there's a certain level of autonomy or freedom that we felt at that time, or that I could feel at that time, because it was just us doing our thing versus accepting the responsibility to grow the company over the next 3 to 5 years, and having that, and putting that on my backpack, and becoming, and I think that's what it was, maybe, right? I became very outcome focused. And I think that's when I became known as more of a taskmaster, right? Was getting so focused on achieving these goals for the company to grow, right? That I just, that I definitely lost sight of the value and the journey and how we're getting there. Regardless of how many people try to explain it to me, right? Look, I'm not saying that people didn't try to explain it to me. I'm not saying that there weren't plenty of people along the way, right? Like as Jay said, like I just didn't have my antennas up to, to that frequency at that time,
Yeah. It's, when you mentioned, you started with a company of 400, you left, it was 18,000, obviously there's different milestones along the way, but you're right. Things change, things become more restrictive, a lot more things you have to pay attention to that you didn't before. And the focus of that production certainly became pretty predominant throughout those years. And I know it's always a focal point inside of any sales team, but I think sometimes we forget how that also applies to people in executive roles too. Like it's people like, oh, they're not in the day-to-day. No, they are in the day-to-day.
Yeah. When somebody says, look, here's day-to-day. If you don't hit your sales goals, we do layoffs next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's pretty, you get into the day-to-day real fast.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. I remember what you used to say to me. Oh, I didn't even have this written down. This just came to mind. I'd have a bad day, at work, and you come over to me and you'd be like, Todd, I got 2 things to tell you. And you're like, first, after the 100th time, I already knew what the 2 things were, right? But like first time, it definitely, puckered up my butthole a little bit when you said, yeah, you're fired. And I was like, oh shit. And you go, good news is you can come back to work tomorrow. That's what you would say to me on a bad day's production. Like, boy, that motivation was amazing. Then, as much as I hated it, guess how many times I've used it since? I've used that line so many times. It's ridiculous. Oh God. When I look back and I say, oh my gosh, I was part of the Skinny Scoundrels, part of a sales team. I had a lot of success, under you. What do you think it was, even with all these hardships and responsibilities? How did you build such a good sales staff and leaders, throughout the company in various different areas? What was your secret sauce there?
Well, now I would tell you unconscious competency was my secret sauce. I was very blessed, being very blessed with an intuition or a gut, if you will, that I just didn't understand, but you know what I mean, but played itself out. And I was able to, and so I was able to identify and see the potential in people, right? Not necessarily for what they were, but just what they could be, because that's what they wanted to be, right? And so I just kind of saw people maybe differently than how others saw them. And as a result, I saw potential where others, saw, something different, right? For whatever reasons. And it doesn't mean that it was, anyway. And I also, and I guess I also think that because I also respected that there's so many different ways to get to an outcome, that, I definitely was very comfortable. And plus I also didn't want anybody over my shoulder ever, right? So I didn't want to be over anybody else in that respect. So it's more like, look, as long as you can get to the goal, then, you have the autonomy and the flexibility to do what you need to do. But to push back and tell me that you got to figure it out and missing goal, well, that one doesn't make a lot of sense. So if you're going to miss goal, then you're going to have to take a little bit more of my advice. If you don't want my advice so much, then you got to then hit goal, right? And so I think that, like, while that seems like so simple, as I've experienced, as I noticed myself more later on, right, and I noticed where I didn't have that flexibility with people, where I didn't have that trust with people, right, where I didn't, while you just sitting there. I never that leadership group was the last time that I was with a leadership team that I trusted everybody having my best interest in mind, in addition to me having theirs. And so there wasn't a land grab or somebody challenging for, stuff that I oversaw or be able to create it or take it, what I mean? I'm referring, and it's just, it's part of a growing company. It's part of the politics and stuff. And so that allowed me. And so in that respect, I guess that was probably the last time I fully exhaled and was comfortable to be myself, because I didn't feel like, I had to worry about, let's just say, I knew that I would provide plenty of moments for somebody to go, gotcha. So I needed to be around people that wouldn't do that to me.
It's you used to say, part of the job is just keeping your ass out of the fire. You used to tell me that. And that's true, building those relationships. I always thought you also did a really great job of hiring people that fit with your leadership style too. And
that's right. Yeah.
We had on our team, we had a lot of really hardworking people that wanted to please. And I felt like that was always something, as much as you can, you try to look for when you're hiring, versus when you get at the level that you got to later on, where you're not even doing the hiring, there's already people in place. Sometimes that can get outside of your comfort zone a little bit. And I was curious as to, hey, look, on the outside looking in, that's kind of, I sort of noticed that, but I was wondering how that differed for you, going from an environment that you had created, you had built up over the years. And some people will say, oh my gosh, I do the worst job doing that. I'm better in the opposite way. But going from that type of environment to an environment now where you didn't do the hiring, you're not doing it, and you're working with these people that maybe are not, they don't know you as well, and maybe they're not into your leadership as much, or maybe they are. But I figured, hey, look, I wanted to know a little bit more about that progress and what you thought about that.
Yeah, so no, that's cool, man. I appreciate you bringing up another traumatic moment from because generally speaking, look, being misunderstood is a root source of a lot of trauma for me in a lot of ways. And to your point, right, those that I hired, right, I have a belief that, look, if you're willing to put in the work, then I'm willing to keep working with you, period, right? And so, so somebody who just had a desire, then I know after that, the rest of it's teachable, right? None of us came out of the womb knowing how to do this stuff, right? So we all, right? So I looked for more of raw ingredients, I guess, in that respect too. But to continue to answer your question, I re-asked me that question, Todd.
Yeah. So you went from a team, Skiddy, that you had put together.
That's right. Yeah, thank you. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it was a real problem for me, frankly, because people wouldn't understand me, whether it be my sense of humor or whether it be my directness or, how I would say things. And, I view things as feedback to get better. And in many cases, feedback to get, the bias typically behind that is, if I'm getting feedback to get better, I'm not doing something right. Right. And so, like, people that didn't know me, right, took, that would be a real big challenge, and as I also got outside of sales and the makeup of people, the wiring is very different, between salespeople and marketing people and data people versus data people, and things of that nature. And so I struggled a lot. And interestingly enough, some of my best relationships with others that I didn't hire only came after a massive blow up. So I don't know. I'm sure you remember Strable, obviously.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right, and I mean, I had Strable was also I value my relationship with her tremendously, and I didn't hire her, and I interpreted her, and then this was like when she ended up moving to my team from somebody else's, based on how I would interpret somebody's actions. I interpreted her actions as like not caring or this, right, essentially. And so we went out to dinner and had a talk about it. And I essentially accused her of, not caring and this and that. And then that burst into, I think there may have been some tears involved, so then I feeling bad. And then, she's telling me the otherwise. And then I think, there's most likely some, well, F you and F you. And then once you kind of do that with each other and you recognize that it's okay, there's a new foundation of equality, I guess, that is formed, right? That then in the comfort level, right, that can be had. And so, and I'm sure if you think back, there's different situations like that where stuff like that happened between you and I that made you then feel comfortable to, push buttons later on, right? And so, unfortunately, the one thing I never figured out how to do during that corporate career was how to establish that relationship without that blow up.
Yeah. I feel like you're describing like the military, like you come out here, we're gonna break you down,
Yeah. Well, in hindsight, there probably was some of that unintentionally, right? Like I'm gonna say I would never. I think hopefully even back then, people would know that my MO is never to tear people down. However, that being said, that doesn't mean, but I can also tell you that I was definitely ignorant of the effect of the wording that can be, what I mean, how the wording can be interpreted, right, and how that could be taken that way, even though that wasn't my intention, right? And so I definitely, I think, had a lot of challenges and a lot of trauma because and I say trauma too, because that means like people that I felt, I don't know, how would they say, like, I'm not good about, people that I had positive things to say about, didn't think that I had those positive things to say about them.
Yeah.
Right. And so that bummed me out. Right. And that's all I'm saying. Right. So I could never figure out how to get that one right. Right. Until again, it was in hindsight. And to the back end of that question was a lot of people would be like, Graham, you were a pain in the butt or whatever else, but I got to tell you, we didn't realize how much you did for us or how much you covered us until you were gone.
Yeah.
There was a lot, unfortunately, there was a lot of that then too. There were people didn't. And so, I never figured out how to do it in real time, man.
Yeah. I got to witness some of those meetings that you were in, sticking up for people. And there was one thing, was many things about you, but one thing I always really appreciated was there wasn't anything that you wouldn't say something to my face and then say something different behind it to someone else. You would never say, Todd, you're doing a great job. Behind closed doors, being like, woo, that Todd, we gotta think a little bit of, about him. And I don't know if people really understand how much stuff like that happens. And, it's, you don't always know it either. So I always appreciated you telling me how much I suck all the time. And then, at least I knew that, you couldn't be saying anything worse behind closed doors.
I'm just, you're very welcome for giving you something to always look forward to the next day. Right.
Yeah.
Just getting a little better because being given the opportunity to be a little better.
Hey, funny. So I always wondered this because there were times that you were very, very approachable, and there was times when you were like totally not approachable. Right? We all have this. Someone catches you at a bad time, no matter what they say, you just, you snarl a little bit. One of the things I learned very quickly and was, hey, look, you don't come to Graham with an issue in the morning, right? Or you don't come to him with like a great idea in the morning time, right? You come in the evening hours after people have gone home and there's, not as much distractions and stuff like that. And, I always was curious about that. And I had my thoughts on it, but I thought I'd just ask you, like, what was different for you in the morning time versus the evening time for you?
Oh, this kind of goes back to my, not understanding my wiring back then. And it took a lot to get me awake and going. And just, to get going in the morning. And so like, it took all I had to try to get to the office on time, as which was not very often. And so, so I was always kind of peeling in. So the real truth is, so I was always peeling in there trying to avoid being seen by somebody else for showing up late. Right. So I'm already starting my day with some anxiousness of sneaking in. Right. And so, I just wasn't. And so then at that point, because I feel, like, oh shit, right, then I better hurry up. Then we got to make sure we get production going since I'm late. right? And so then it was like, because then like anything, as you know, whatever sin occurred, writing a deal or hitting goal, somehow cured that sin. And so right. So it was kind of like, all right, let's at least get some deals on the board. And then the other part of it was, by the time everybody was gone, it was also like, sensory overload was like gone, right? There's not so many people around, not all the energy around. Right. And so at that point in time, I kind of looked at it like, once I got there until whenever everybody else's day was scheduled was like my time for them to do what they needed, generally speaking. And then but like once everybody left was when I got to do my stuff.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, to me that makes sense. And I get the logic there. And I was happy that I was able to recognize that a little earlier on in my career.
Well, if nothing else, look, if nothing else, is I'm consistent, right? Like if you pay attention, like I'll tell you how I am, right? I was pretty routine.
What I wanted to know too, and this almost like taking a break from the business here just for a second. Like I'm almost feel like we need like a commercial. You need like a sponsor, like Zoloft or Prozac or Lexapro or something like that, here. But Graham, I knew you really, really well, inside the office. And I feel like I got to know you probably better than most outside, but we didn't hang out like, Friday, Saturday nights, occasionally, and that would be like the world to me if, we went out. But what I did want to know is like, how did you make friends? Like your friends, were they did you have new friends when you took on this job? Because, you're all of a sudden you're working, 70, 80 hours a week and weekends. Did you keep some of your old friends? Did you what was your life outside the office like for those, 20 years?
It's funny. It's like, I worked with you for 21 years, but I really don't know shit about you. So what happened after you left? Hey, look, man, I was a private person, right? Gosh. So the short answer is I don't maintain. I'm a fairly solitary person, right? And even believe it or not, even though I was around people and focused, that was more of a means to the end and learning how to try to be something, right? Trying to be an extrovert when I'm really more of an introvert, right? So initially, a lot of times, so I didn't really have friends, to be quite frank, right? Like I had, in the sense of the thing that maybe most that people would think of, I had friends that I had compartmentalized friends, right? Like I had friends that I golfed with, I had friends that I went drinking with, and I occasionally had like work friends that I might grab a drink with and just talk shop with, right? But there was never anybody who was in all three of those buckets. They were always three different things. So it's kind of like three different Grahams at all times that, and in some cases, some of those, like, we're hiding, right? Like I didn't want the work people to see the golf Graham.
You're right.
Right. And so in some cases there was definitely hiding that was being done. And, in my private life, because I knew people wouldn't understand, the need to blow off steam. Yeah, because it didn't fit the traditional mold. But like, I was a single guy. I wasn't for most of that time. I wouldn't have like a family and kids and doing other stuff, right? So as everybody else was doing that, I still was a single guy, right? And so like the way everybody just grew up and changed around me. So that's the other part, right? It was like, I think Jay to that point was maybe the closest one, but like, I didn't really hang out much with Jay either, right? And so so thanks for again, bringing up the painful memory of the lack of friends in my life and people to get close with. But no, that that was really the case. And then even now, right? Like I've kind of got people that are in my spiritual world and people that were in like Skiddy, and then there's just people that know me today, whatever, or just in know me as Country Club Graham or whatever, right? Right, which is again very unusual, to have the spiritual and those two things. That's a whole nother separate discussion. But yeah, it's so I just kind of I learned how to compartmentalize my life to get what I needed, to get by.
Do you feel like, hey, look, you're hired in, you're 21, you're in this corporate environment, you're moving up the ranks, you're doing a great job, getting promoted, but you're also getting older, and some of the things that you maybe were important to you at 21 and starting a career, did some of those things change like along the way, like when you're 27, 28, 30, 35?
No, man, I was always a very arrogant little shit. I was, let's look back. I certainly never lacked confidence in my ability to get the job done, even for something I had no idea about. Right. I always had my confidence in my ability to just, get underneath the hood, figure it out and get going, it just, failure's not an option. So, all right, then we'll figure it out. It was that simple to me. Right. But it definitely was, there's a lot of rough around the edges. To say the least, I could sort of get myself down a rabbit hole here. So let me pull myself back up. What was the original question again?
Well, I was asking you about your friends, but then I was saying, how did you change from when you were 21 and higher?
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, I essentially was still. Yeah, no, I still look, man. I very much thought that the way that the game of life was to be played was you become an executive at a company, you make money, right? You provide for people. Your value is what you're able to provide. Society places value on those that make money. They somehow think that you're more wise or smart if you have a different income compared to other people. I'm not saying that's right, but I just think, right, like everything. So I just was like, oh, and then you're supposed to, well then if you want guys to try to think you're cool, try to, date girls that look like this. Okay. All right. Well, I'll try that. Let's see how that goes. Right. Like, essentially a lot of the superficial check marks of like, what am I, I live because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. Right. Because that's what I thought the game of life was. And there's no doubt that when, being a young guy and successful at a very young age, at least economically, relatively speaking, there's no, you definitely, what was I going to say? You get, I got, what was it? I can't believe nobody ever punched me, frankly. Right. I mean, that's one there. And I really struggled with those changes, to be frank with you. Look, man, I definitely knew how to get results, but what I didn't know how to do necessarily was not leave dead bodies in the wake.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that became a real problem for me. And it became a real problem with, people feeling, getting treated a certain way. Not like I didn't realize that was happening, right, until somebody would tell me, right? Like I would never intentionally, want to hurt someone's feeling or make them feel bad or things like that, right? But unless somebody would tell me, I wouldn't realize I was doing it. Anyway, it was happening, a lot, because one of the challenges as you go up the ladder is that it's harder to get honest feedback, right? And so by the time you get it, it's like, it's a shitstorm. It's not just like, you're catching it at the little time. And so, yeah, I definitely created a reputation for, towards the end, especially probably of, or somewhere in the middle in the last 5-8 years of being, rough around the edges, like right, unapproachable. I never learned to, because look, I never trusted, frankly, I trusted very few people. Right. And so as a result of trusting very few people, I just didn't allow others to help me. And, that definitely, I didn't do myself any favors in that respect.
Yeah. You know what, though? I think that oftentimes you're harder on yourself, and your perception of yourself, just like anyone, is probably not how other people perceived you. And I brought up before, like you kind of, you hired people that
That's good, because I felt like a pretty big piece of shit for a lot of my career.
No, well, you know what, you for me personally, let me just talk about me for a second, because it's always, you always hate to put words in other people's mouths, but I think a lot of us felt this way from conversations that we had. At my time in my life, I needed a leader like you, right? I needed that person that would force me to get answers. I needed that person that was hard on you but cared, and that person that when you gave them something that they wanted, you got just that little glimpse of pleasure that was made you want to see it again, and I'll get into it a little bit later. Here's a little thing to make sure people are still on the podcast and stick with us. But a couple of things, a top 10 list of things I really appreciated from Graham along the way. Some of them are weird. You wouldn't even think someone would appreciate it. But for me, it was really important. And I know this is probably cliche, Graham, and probably for your audience, it might be cliche, but I got to ask it is, like, if you had it to do over again, like, would you go down this same path? Was it worth it? And then the other thing I would ask is, if the money wasn't there, would you have still done it?
If the money was, I liked the first. If the money was that, it was not there, I definitely would not have done it. Okay. So much of my identity was tied up in my sense of worth and value was tied up into that economic identity and success, right? So no, I probably would have gone elsewhere. Early on anyway, after I got into things and built relationships was then that answer would change. Then the other question that you asked was, sorry, what was it?
So what I want to know is if you would basically do it again.
That's what if I do it again.
Go through again.
Yeah, do it again. Yeah. Sorry, you ask me these questions and keep having me go back so far, and I start getting my time to get the answer. I go down and I go, whoa, I got to pull myself back up, and I forget the question you asked. Would I do it again? So the first, I'll answer the other one that people always ask is, are there any regrets? Because I spend a lot of time how do I answer the question? Any regrets? Yeah, I do have regrets. I have regrets that people that I thought positive things about didn't know that I felt that way about them, right? That I do regret that, right? That does bum me out, right? That being said, aside from me having an unintended effect on others than what I wanted, right? Like you said, everyone also comes into each other's lives for the reasons that they needed to, and so I have to, keep that in my mind. But the other part of it is, if I'm honest with myself, I don't know how else I would have learned. One of the things that made me great drove people nuts about me, right? I was very stubborn, figured out my own way, and I'll be damned if somebody's going to tell me what to do. Especially if I know that, something can be done, and even if I haven't figured it out yet. Wow. And so I just, aside from doing it, learning kind of the school of hard knocks, and I don't know how else I could have worked my way through things to be able to be at peace with the answers.
Okay. Good. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Are you still into Looney Tune characters? And do you still collect stuffed animals?
Wow. So I still have them all.
Okay.
I have not. But yeah, that was definitely one of the ways that I, interestingly enough, that was one of the ways that I, like you said, after wearing masks to fit in all the time, right? That was a way of just keeping that playful side of myself that wasn't welcome in the corporate environment or whatever, which also means that, yes, I still have all of those dancing hamsters that you guys have. Absolutely have all of them.
Oh gosh. For your audience that doesn't know, I think it's important for them to know you actually have a tattoo of a Looney Tune character. Is it on your right arm? Is that where it is?
No, it's my right leg, my right ankle.
Your right leg. Okay. I couldn't remember. Arms and legs look so much alike. And what is it of, Skitty?
Tweety Bird.
Tweety Bird. That's right. So, and I'll tell the audience a little story. You moved into your new house, and you were showing us around and stuff like that. And I don't know if you showed us the room or if I just opened up the door. It was a guest bedroom, and there was a bed, and all on the bed were Looney Tunes stuffed animals. And I loved it, and I thought someday I'm going to use this, to embarrass you, but I never really got that opportunity. um, like, I wondered, like, we know now, and I think it's talked about a little bit more, that people inside of the corporate world and executives, they still have anxiety. There's still things that bother them. They second guess things. Like, did you have like did you have any of that? Like, did you ever think like, oh my God, like this is a person that's gonna see right through me? Or like were there scenarios that made you anxious even at the level that you were? Or did you just kind of like, you know, boom, this is my task, I'm just gonna move forward it and get it done?
I was wearing disguises to work every day. Yeah, I was full of anxiety.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, I would equate myself to being like a robot doing A/B testing all the time. Okay, how about this person if I answer this way? Do I fit in? Does it work? How about if I say this? Does that work as small talk? Oh, that one doesn't work. Okay, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Right? Yeah. So yeah, there was a shit ton of anxiety about those things. Especially when I was dealing with unfamiliar things or dealing with things for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. And were you different with your team versus the people that you were, reporting to, the executive leadership? Was there one Graham with his team and another Graham that was, with, with those people that you were reporting to?
To an extent, right? I mean, like the same way that you talked about knowing your audience, right? There's a time to approach people. There's a time to say, you say this to this person, you say it to this way, right? Like the same way that you learn how to, navigate conversations with your wife. You know what things are going to push buttons. You know what, right? And things like that, right? So in that respect, then yeah, absolutely, right? You definitely do those types of things. But no, that actually, again, that also caused me a lot of problems because, I guess I don't know. It's been enough years. I'm not saying anyone's name or anything else, but look, I saw the hypocrisy between different management tiers, right? Like the collaboration and involvement and the rah-rah and the fun is like acceptable and wanted from everybody up to here. But then there's a spot where now we just want you to do what you want. We just want you to do what we ask you to do, right? Yeah. And we just need you to bring it. And there was just so there was. I just noticed that it just wasn't the same, and so I just never found myself. And to that point about wearing masks, right? Like I've never really been comfortable in the traditional C-suite environment and around your traditional executives in the past, right? Because in many cases, a lot of times those guys went to school, and went to colleges and things like that and had degrees. And so there's a certain vernacular and way to describe things and it's knowledgeable and they just kind of know how to speak to each other. Well, I didn't go to school. I didn't know any of that stuff, right? And I just succeeded along the way, right? So there was always not an intimidation because I was going to be intimidated, but I definitely had a lot of anxiety around how I was speaking and wondering if I was coming across the right way or not, or if I was being understood, or if I was coming across as intelligent or ignorant, right? I just didn't know how to know because I didn't read faces necessarily accurately either, So yeah. that wasn't good for me. Yeah.
So I'm going to take a time out here and I want to go through a top 10 list.
Okay.
Of important times in my life with Graham Skidmore, things that still to this day I think about and sometimes think about many, many, many times. And I thought your audience might want to hear it because it gives them a little insight into what Skiddy meant to people inside of the corporate world. So with number 10, we started here. I feel like we need a little like drum thing. Maybe we can.
I know, man. Am I have to get some Kleenex here, man? Oh,
well, listen to him first. So, all right. Number 10 is a flight to Boston. I took some time off, and I told you I'm flying to Boston, and you go, what dates? I go, well, the dates I'm taking off. You go, well, what day are you flying to Boston? I said, I'm flying on this day. And you go, okay, what time is your flight? I'm like, boy, like he really cares. Like he really wants to know what is going on. Like, I'm like, what's he gonna do? And you're like, are you going into Boston or are you going somewhere else? I'm like, no, I'm going to Boston. I was thinking, what is he gonna do for me? Like, I've been having a good month. Maybe he's setting something up. But then what it was is you gave me the insight, and I was the only person I think who knew this at the time, or maybe it was something else. It made me feel so special because you were having like a secret relationship with someone at the office. And you were going to be on that same flight, and you didn't want me to say something, or we had social media at the time, so I couldn't post it. And the best thing was, so I got to the airport. I'm so excited. I'm going to see you and this special person, right? Come on the plane. You guys missed your flight. You didn't even make the flight after all that. And so I'm like, what the hell's going on? You missed it. And then you were on the flight on the way back, and you guys bought me drinks. I think, make sure I wasn't going to say something I shouldn't have, but it made me feel, it did. I'm not even going to lie to you. It made me feel so special. And that's just number 10. Number 9, my wedding. I wanted to make sure that you were there before I walked down the aisle. I remember that. We always knew that Skiddy could be a little late, but you were there. And I remember seeing you as I walked down the aisle, got to hang out with you that night. Super special to me. The other thing I loved, and this always gave us some insight into your personal life. And like you said, you were always, pretty much on the DL. But for those of you who don't know, there used to be, back in the day when we first started, there used to be an annual poem that would come out every year, and it would talk about all the accomplishments people had. It would make fun of some people, and there would always be a part where it was designated just to make fun of Graham Skidmore about the relationships that he had with women. And we would laugh, and it would just give us some insight. And we'd see you laugh about yourself, probably because you had to. There was no choice at the time.
I mean, the truth is the truth, right? Like, I mean, it was
the truth is the truth. It was fun. And speaking of fun and the truth, you also knew a lot about your people, and you knew a lot about me. One time you gave me a gift, and this was a gift that meant so much to me. And it was probably, I don't know, this probably still could have been an expensive gift, but you got me the world's largest gummy worm.
Gummy snake.
Yeah, gummy snake. And I mean, this thing was 26 pounds. And gummies are for your audience, it's like, that's my jam. Like, I salivate. I'm like Pavlov's dog. I'm thinking about gummies right now. I need to have some every night. You bought it for me. I remember I laid it out over Thanksgiving, and we cut it up with like a knife and gave it to the family. And I could tell everyone there's something special about something when you say, hey, my boss, my leader gave me this, because you want other people to think that you're liked as well. It's not just you that, oh, like I'm in this environment where not only am I enjoying it, but my boss gave me this because he likes me so much, right? And then we used it with the wine set that you had gotten a few years prior. And every Thanksgiving, I pull it out with the family. I used to text you and say, hey, look, it's using the wine set. And it was those little gifts that meant so much to me, not because it was just me, but because I could show other people, like, how much you thought of me, right? And I always appreciated those. To this day, I still do. We used to go every year. You would invite me and Rachel, who's my wife. You would invite us to the NF gala in downtown Detroit, and it was always a blast. It was always so much fun, and you always knew who I was taking. We didn't always know who you were taking, but that was also part of the fun, is be able to kind of see and talk a little stuff about you, when you went to the restroom, and tell some real skitty stories. But we didn't always get an insight into that part of your life, so you giving that to me meant the world to me. It was awesome. Promoting me when you did the promotion. And there was something we always said, is that, like, some people get promoted before, but you always waited to make sure that, like, it was something that you felt comfortable with, that was really earned. And I always knew that. And I really appreciated when, that promotion email came out, and, you got the team together. There was two of us that got promoted at the same time from the, from the team. And just to show you how like little things matter, the other person that got promoted the first year that we were on your team, she got a birthday cake and I didn't. And I still remember that to this day too. So just to let you know, 23 years, 24
Wow.
years later, you still remember those little things. So, but no, this is supposed to be a top 10 things of the things I really like. And I already moved over to something that bothered me from 24 years ago, not getting a birthday cake. So, so promoting me was huge. The other thing that stuck with me and I really appreciated was shortly after I got promoted, you had me come to your desk and you said, you are now getting demoted because I didn't meet the numbers, but you read the numbers wrong. And then what happened was you actually brought me back over to your desk the next day and you apologized. And because I had a heart attack pretty much. I was at, home, didn't know what the hell was going to go on. But you actually apologized, brought me over to your desk and said, you hope it didn't cause you too much trouble. But I remember that. And I was thinking, gosh, okay, like this guy really is looking at it like a second time. It isn't just like looking at it at a first glance and saying, oh my God, here's a problem. And that meant so much to me that like, okay, I can trust him that if there's a mistake made, he's going to catch it. So as strange as it thought and how bad it was at that moment in time, like it created this atmosphere of trust down the road. You had an old house in Farmington Hills.
Mm-hmm.
I was there one time. I came over. I think we were all hanging out. You had to get something at your house, and I walked in, and you had a medicine cart. You were like a 20. You were like a, I don't know, 25 years old, and you had a medicine cart like my Nana. Okay, and it was the craziest thing I had ever seen in my life. It was literally on wheels. Like you could go from like the bedroom to the kitchen. And I was like, oh my God, if this guy's showing me this, like, okay, he trusts me because this is crazy. And also humanized you. Like, I'm like, okay, this guy really is human. In fact, he needs all these things to get going on a daily basis. He's got a cart. Here's another
This guy is human. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I wasn't sure till then. And
it's funny how many people have said those same words.
You might remember this. I don't know if you do, but 6 months into my tenure, I'm a banker, and I got one of those dreaded call complaints. And for your audience that doesn't know, a call complaint was when you didn't return a client's phone call after 24 hours, email would come out, and it was the most serious thing that could happen inside of your career, and people would lose their jobs regardless of production. Be top producer, lose your job for not calling clients back within 24 hours. And I get an email from Dan Gilbert, CC'd you on it, and he goes, Graham, doesn't Todd know he can't work here anymore? It was 6 months into my tenure, and didn't even address the email to me. It was addressed to you, and I was on it. And I'm like, there I go. My career's done. It's over. I think I was probably shaking. I don't know if I was or not. You came over to my desk and I was like, well, that's it. He's here. Graham's just going to, sweep me under the rug. I'm done. You came over to my desk and you sat down. You go, let me handle this. And you typed up the email response. You didn't yell. You didn't get angry. And I was like, well, at that moment, it was like, that was awesome. Like, totally awesome. I don't know if you remember that or not, Skitty, because there's so many things that
Call complaints. There's a lot of trauma, but look, to your points, call complaints was a very traumatic event for all parties involved. So yeah, and and you were known for having a handful of those. There was a few of those. Yes, I took some bullets for you.
So can we edit that out? And the number one thing that I remember was I was a banker. I don't even know how many years I had been with you, but I'd been with you at least a couple of years. I had just eaten lunch, and I don't even remember what I had ate, but I remember I was totally full. And you came over to me and you said, hey, Todd, you want to go to lunch? And like, just so everyone knows, like no one went out to lunch there. Like maybe you went out and you grabbed something. but you didn't go out to lunch and eat anything. And, you know, that would be like, you know, employment suicide over there. And you took me out and we went to Coney and I got chicken strips and fries and I couldn't even eat it. Right. And I didn't know, like, I'm like, oh, what's he going to talk to me about? Like, there was just a million things going through my head. And you just wanted to have a conversation. We didn't even really talk much. I don't even remember really what it was that we talked about. But that single gesture, like, just totally floored me. And like, I had so much buy-in for years and years. I mean, I'm still thinking about it now. And I think about it inside of my own career that I have now and just what those little things can mean to people. You might not even remember. You don't remember taking me to Coney Island, you know, but
well, I remember that phase of my life very vividly because, to your point, like I would just joked around about being called a robot, right? And being like, oh, he is human. And
yeah.
So believe me. And so I told you, I felt like a piece of shit most of my career. And so while that, what's interesting is because that was your perspective. My perspective at that time was being told that people don't understand you. You need to become a freaking human. You need to like figure this, go take people out or something. Like, this is a real problem. Go get your shit together. It was so like, it was like that doesn't mean, who was it? I don't think it kind of started to come out like it wasn't something like I wanted to do. I didn't know how to make connections with people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. And so as a result of me not knowing how to make connections with people, like eventually Jay was just like, seriously, you really don't get it? You go fucking do this. Yeah. And I was like, thank you. Okay. Because look, if it was that simple, if I just had the answer, I would have done it. Right. Like I don't need to keep getting shit for the same thing repeatedly. Right. Like it was little simple things like make human connections didn't always come easy to me. They didn't come naturally to me. Or like on a sales call was different. Right. Like there and even in work. Right. Because there was goals that were involved and it's just about helping somebody to accomplish their goals. Right. In each situation. Right. And so I could take a caring perspective and engage in the conversation, know what to go, but just random. Hey, what's up? How you doing? What do you care about? I don't know. I don't know about these things. It's very stressful for me. Don't ask me these questions.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, hey, look, Graham, there's so many important times. I mean, I literally have like 25 things here that,
and by the way, that's one of those things too. I talk about regret, right? Like if I had known really how much stuff like that meant to people, right, I would have done it a lot more often. Right. Like I really, and by the way, and people may have said it to me, but again, I don't know. I wasn't in the place to be able to have the empathy to really understand how much that meant to feel it myself. You know what I mean? Like I hadn't experienced it. So I didn't know how to really give it the weight that it really was. And had I known those things, I would have done a lot more of that stuff more often because like I said, there was so much trauma that I had trying to get people to feel that way. Right. And I always struggled making those connections. It's so funny how even when I did them, I did what I was looking to do. I didn't even recognize it.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? But you know what's awesome is that other people did, and then you know they take those things that they learned along the way, and they they pass it forward. And I feel like we need like a bonus reel, and I could talk through other things that made me really appreciate you, like the toll booth story where you didn't have enough money to get through the toll booth. You had to borrow money from your uncle, to do it, and
it's like a 33-year-old man who was right. Yes.
your uncle had to give you like you're like, oh, I just need a couple bucks. He goes,
I had to borrow $50 from my. I remember he gave me a $50 bill, and I'm like, this is something to eat. Yeah. So I could get gas on the toll to get home. I'm too old for this. Yeah.
Remember gambling with you on Christmas?
Oh yeah, that was a holiday tradition.
Yeah, that was fun. It was oh my gosh, there was some great. There was just some awesome times. I remember one time, Skiddy, you were yelling at our leadership crew like something fierce. It was, I mean, even for you, this was a whole other level. You brought us in an office. You had a whiteboard. I don't even know what the hell you were writing on it. You were just yelling and all these things. And it was us looking at you, and your assistant had her back to you and was looking at us, and she was like taking notes. And while you were in this tirade, just explosive tirade.
Oh, is this when she fell asleep?
She fell asleep. And we're all bumping, all the leaders were bumping each other. And I think someone like started laughing and you went off even more. And then we like kind of pointed to her and you looked and you saw she was sleeping. And we were all so happy. And you said, okay, you got mad. You go, but you guys can leave. So you just stopped whatever it was. And we knew that she was like in deep shit, but we were just so happy to be out of that room. Oh my God. That was so, I can't believe she fell asleep. That's terrible. That was so funny.
Oh yeah, I believe I remember that meeting because but even though she was sleeping, she still made sure to put, because she was taking minutes of the meeting, and apparently she was putting like the tone, because Jay was like, "You look very skinny. You're coming out very angry in this meeting," and I'm like, "She was freaking sleeping," but she remembered to put that
in. Oh God. Oh, hey, look. I hope this is some sort of bonus reel, but you weren't always the most compassionate person, when it came to coming into work or missing something or or things like that. And I remember I called you up one morning.
Most human related items, I lacked compassion.
Well, I called you up one morning and we had a really important meeting. It was me, you, and Farner. We were gonna meet, and I don't even remember exactly what it was about, but it was something important. And I called you up and I said, "Hey, Skitty, I'm not going to be able to come in today." And and blowing up. This is your chance. You've just thrown your whole career away. Da 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 da. And I said, "Skitty, I can't come in. Like, taking a shower this morning, and I looked down and my left nut's the size of a softball." You go, "Okay, you go take care of that. Don't worry about it. We got you. We got you covered. Let me know how it goes." I remember that. I still laugh. I still tell that story to my friends, along the
By the way, that jump to conclusions, then hear stuff and put your foot in the mouth and feel bad. Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. That move plagued me for much of my career and personal life. Yeah.
I will say you're also, though, a great scapegoat because of the way you were. I used to blame everything on you to my wife, and like, "Oh yeah, Skitty's got us, working late tonight." Even if you didn't even like want us to, it was just me who wanted to be there, getting. I'd always blame it on you and be like, or if I wanted to go, work out with some people or go out at, afterwards and be like, "Yeah, Skitty's, he's got us going again, man." Like, "Oh yeah, total asshole."
Again, I mean, like, the truth is the truth. It was. Yeah, it's true. I did make that easy. Yes, I did.
Remember the homeless guy that you took the friendship to?
Kenny.
Yeah. And you would give me updates every week in a weekly meeting about this guy, and then I'm like, "Skitty, really don't give him money." You go, "No, he's not really. He chooses to be homeless. He makes all this money, and he doesn't need any money." And then, like, as the stories went along, he's like, "Yeah, he needs some money." Like, "Skitty, don't give him money. Like, seriously, like, this just shows like how soft you were in a way. Like, don't give him money." And you're like, "Nah, I won't." And then as the story, like, you stop telling the stories, I go, "Skitty, you gave the guy money, didn't you?" Yeah, but he's gonna pay me back. He's gonna pay me back. And this guy worked you over for like months, and then finally gave him a good chunk of change, and he just left you. It's like you couldn't even make a homeless guy for a friend. It was like the craziest thing in the world.
That was it was a couple $100, and it was I think it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, one of those times, and I was leaving late, and he was there by himself, and yeah.
You don't worry about it. He's gonna pay me back. But you did a lot of great things too. There's other stories. I remember you telling me of, helping a friend out who had a child daycare place and, giving him some money to help out with that. There's like all these stories, and you did so much good for people that you knew that your heart was always in the right place. Your sister with college, and there was a lot of things that I remember of things that you did. You never publicized it, and I don't even know how it ever came up in conversation, but things that stuck with me and things that I said, "Oh my gosh, you know what? Someday I'd love to do those things too." Take care of family or in-laws, and and things like that. And it was great to witness those things. I asked you a question, if you do it all over again and such. For me, it's a pointed yes. I had this opportunity to work with you for a really long time. As I tell people, we broke up for a little bit. We got back together, later on, and I always appreciated it, and the relationship we had through the ups and even some of the downs. But for the most part, when you look at it, it was just a positive experience, and something that for half my life, I've literally spent with you, and that's awesome and special to me.
Thank you. That means a lot. It's, one of the things that have always been important to me was just to have my time matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you walk away or you feel like, a piece of shit most of the time, you don't have that feeling. Right. And so, I appreciate that because, look, these are the things that I'm realizing for the first time.
Yeah.
And thankfully, when you're saying them, I'm at a spot in my life where I'm able to hear them and appreciate them and be grateful for them. Right. So,
well, I just want your audience to know, though, too, like, okay, how'd you go from corporate Graham to, this.
How did I go from no compassion compassion to a decent amount of compassion?
But you know what, though? But I want them to know that it was there. It really was there. And hey, look, people grow and people change. You can't expect anyone to be what they are in their, mid 40s to be that same person when they were 21. Like that's just never gonna happen. But over the time that you and I were working together, like, these things just resonate with me. And it wasn't things that I had to, like, oh my gosh, let me think about it. No, it's things that pop up all the time. And, day to day, things I talk about with my wife, things I talk about with team members and friends. And it's just a part of my life. So I wouldn't say that you've completely changed. I'd just say, hey, look, you grew from where you were. And it's pretty awesome.
To your point, I've taken off the masks. I've learned how to become comfortable in my own skin, learn how to understand myself, which is obviously really important to becoming comfortable in your own skin, right? And and some of that too is it's so funny as you say all these things, at the time, like, I guess I don't think I ever realized that, how do I say, I had a bigger personality than what I think I realized. Even like when I thought I was being quiet or fitting in or whatever else, right? Like, I wasn't, right? And as you say these things, I go, wow, those are okay. Yeah, I guess I always joked around about providing memorable moments, but I guess that we really did because, Anyway, there's a lot of fun times.
Yeah, and hey, look, you always helped us navigate through the tough times too, and that's what I remember the most. There's this, like, quote by Oprah that I still use today, and it's like, hey, look, it's not who rides with you in the limo. Your friends are the ones that are gonna ride with you in the tow truck when the limo breaks down. I mean, and hey, look, there was a lot of tough times individually. Just for me in my career, there was tough times for me personally. And then there was just tough times in the industry, that were just terrible. And, you always helped us navigate through those, and you always stuck up for us, and you stood by us. And, when I still have conversations with people, from the team, to this day, those are things we still recognize and talk about. So, maybe you don't recognize or see all these things, just like you don't remember every little thing you did for me, inside those things, but I remember it. And if people remember those things, then hey, look, you did a pretty damn good job, Skinny.
It definitely makes me feel much better about the time spent. There's no doubt, right?
Yeah.
Without a doubt, yeah. No, I appreciate that. it means a lot. I mean, obviously I'm not going to digest it all here on the podcast because I could easily, anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not going to I'm not going to take myself into a crying mess here at the moment. I'll wait till after we end. But wow. Yeah, no, look, man, I've really, by the way, did you have anything? I know we we didn't rehearse and we didn't talk about what the questions were. It was just like,
No.
hey man, right. Like, and so, and you and it was, I was very curious to see what was going to come from it. And it definitely, was very productive. And I talked about self-reflection, right? It was definitely some very positive and productive self-reflection that I wouldn't have given myself credit for, something positive when I should have. Right. And I think that's important for all of us, right? When it comes to rewriting our things, anytime we can rewrite a negative story with a positive one that's truthful, especially that's truthful, right?
Yeah.
Got to do that, And so, yeah, it really does. It means, it means a lot. Those were,
hey, I just want to reiterate though to you, Skiddy, like there's negative things inside of your story, but it wasn't a negative story. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's, I want you, and I want the people to understand that too. And I know your perspective is different, totally. I 100% get that. But I think it's also a job as a friend to tell you sometimes when your perspective's fucked up, and it isn't the reality of the of the situation, and but I don't know, it was an awesome ride, and to be honest with you, I'm more sad that it's over than I am that that we went through it, you know what I'm saying? So like that's my perspective of the situation.
Yeah, 25 years ago I could get it where I got away with tying, if you remember, Mike Young, into his chair with the cord from a phone
Oh my God!
to get him to stay seated, right? Like it was somewhat in jest, somewhat serious, right? But to your point about social media, yeah, man, there's so many. Thankfully, there's just I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have doing that. Yeah, very fortunate that there was not social media as I was going through those learning phases of life. So I guess as we're wrapping up here, I know this is a little while. I can't, I really do appreciate, everything, the honest conversation and the depth of the conversation. And I wasn't sure, like I said, I wasn't too sure what to expect with anything. And, but it, as does, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be doing it, things work out as they're supposed to. And it's always, and a lot of times those fears are things that we just make up in our own head, and I certainly did. And, this was great. That's all I could say. I really appreciated this tremendously. I really appreciate you taking the time away from your family tonight to, to have this conversation.
Yeah. You know what? And it was great and an honor to be asked. And I'd be lying to you, and, this is a podcast piece of it, but, I'm like, oh my gosh, it'd be great to kind of, get back together with with Graham in the non-physical sense, gives you an opportunity another end to kind of say, oh my gosh, we should go out and grab a bite, or well,
I invited you like 3 times and you never took me up on it, so I was like, all right.
No, you asked me to be your caddy and carry your clubs around. That's what
I did not ask you to get out of here. He's making that up.
When I tell my friends the story, that's the story I tell.
By the way, if you are free in October, I do need a caddy.
Yeah, fuck you.
I really do, though. I'm just saying. So if you haven't found out a reason to hang out before then, I'll send you the date. You can pencil it in.
Yeah, I'm in. I'll wear something nice. I'll be there. I'll meet you at the 9th grade at midnight.
9th grade at 9 or midnight, whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, for those of you that are still with us, I appreciate it. And I hope that you enjoyed it, some insight into understanding the science of me here as we, as episode of Understanding the Science of You. Anyhow. All right. Well, I'm crying. I'm laughing. No, God. Never go wrong when you're laughing hard enough. So hard you cry. So I hope that whoever's that would listen and got some good laughs too, because, that's healing medicine. And I hope you have an awesome and blessed week. Take care.